அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். அண்ணா பெயரில் அமைந்திருக்கும் இந்த அரங்கத்தில் இருமொழி கொள்கையில் நம்பிக்கை உடையவராக அவர் இருந்த காரணத்தினால் இதுவரையில் நடந்த அனைத்து அரங்கங்களும் தமிழாக இருந்த காரணத்தினால் அவருடைய மற்றொரு கவலையான ஆங்கிலத்தில் நான் பேசுவதாக முடிவு செய்திருக்கிறேன். 24ஆம் தேதி என்னுடைய கலைஞரை பற்றிய நூலை வெளியிட்டு முதலமைச்சர் பேசிய போது நான் ஒன்று விஷயத்தை கூறினேன். என்னுடைய பொறுப்பு என்பது சுயமரியாதை கருத்தியலை தமிழ் கூறும் நல்லுலகத்திற்கும் அப்பால் எடுத்துச் செல்வது என்பதுதான். அப்பொழுது தமிழ் கூறும் நல்லுலகத்திற்கு அப்பால் எடுத்துச் செல்ல வேண்டும் என்றால் தமிழ் கூறியது நமக்குள் நாமே பேசிக்கொள்வதற்போல் ஆகும் என்பதால் இந்த டயலாகாக இது மாற்றுவதற்காக இந்த என்னுடைய பேப்பரை ஆங்கிலத்தில் எழுதியிருக்கிறேன். இப்பொழுது படிக்கிறேன். Dravidian narratives, dignity trumps humiliation. It is important to contextualize the various creative interventions of the Dravidian movement since the third decade of the last century. The public sphere was dominated by the nationalists. The public sphere was dominated by the nationalists. The focus was on anti-colonial struggle, and it was oblivious to the struggle for dignity that was launched by the publication of the Non-Brahmin Manifesto in 1916. I've used the term Dravidian narratives to denote the heterogeneous interlocking public of the movement, which was and is vastly different from the homogeneous monochromatic pan-Indian nationalism. The pan-Indian erasure of the details is created by laying emphasis on different forms of narratives as silos. It created Sahitya Academy to address literature, Lalit Kala Academy to foster visual arts, and Sangeet Natak Academy to nurture performing arts. On the other hand, in Tamil Nadu's institutional arrangements, all forms of articulation were brought under one roof, Tamil Nadu ஏ.எஸ நாடக மன்றம். For a distance observer, this may be seen as a difference in approach to culture between the union government since independence and the DMK government after 1973, the year the then Chief Minister M. Karunanidhi created the Tamil Nadu ஏ.எஸ நாடக மன்றம். The fact is that the nationalists such as Dr. V. Raghavan, a polymath Sanskritist, played a role in creating cultural silos and remained a key member of the pan-Indian imagination by being a member of both the Sahitya Academy as well as Sangeet Natak Academy. He was the longest serving secretary of the Chennai Music Academy. He was a secretary between 1942 to 1979. It was not only about the way the governmental institutions functioned, but also how entrenched cultural icons perceived art and articulation in the run-up to the independence and the first 3 decades after independence. In a broader sense, this represents the difference between the coming together model of the self-respect movement, where the focus is on empowerment, and that of the holding together model, where the focus is on governance and control. In his introductory note to Bernard Bates' Protestant Textuality and the Tamil Modern, A.R. Venkatachalapati hints at the limits of journalistic reporting of politically significant interventions. He cites his own translation of Tiruvika's observation under the rubric The Mischief of Newspapers. The correspondent, I quote, "The correspondent renders the speech in his own words. The views of the speaker thus lose their original garb. Sometimes meanings gets distorted. Occasionally distortion is deliberate. If I elaborate on the mischief of the party newspapers, it will run into pages. In short, one may say that it is rare indeed for talks delivered in vernacular to be reproduced faithfully in newspapers." Venkatachalapati also cites the observation of Periyar about the prejudicial reporting of the speech by P. Varadarajan Naidu, which was in Tamil. In this environment, the self respect leaders did not wait for the nationalists to give them space or to engage in dialogue. They embarked on a journey of creating their own ideological vehicle. They launched multiple publications. They wrote and staged plays across the state. They created a new form of literary and cultural interventions. And finally, they created their own cinema. This trend is not about the past alone. When the Indian skies opened up for private participation, the first satellite channel, Sun TV, was launched by Kalanidhi Maran, a product of the movement. Periyar EVR was the one to make the earliest meaningful media intervention. The preface to the edited volume Revolt recorded how the move was socially and politically significant. The preface read, I quote, Revolt was the self-respect movement's first English language weekly. In 1925, only 7% of the population in Tamil Nadu was literate. Yet Periyar dared to start a Tamil weekly Kudiyarasu that year. In 1928, the year that saw Revolt being published, a few Tamilians knew to read or write English. It is surely a historical feat that Revolt continued to be published until 1930. Outlining the reasons for starting the English Weekly, Periyar noted that he desired the ideals of the self-respect movement to be known to people outside Tamil Nadu. He felt that this will give the politically selfish class a reason to understand the importance of the self-respect movement and their selfish, narrow interpretation of the movement's egalitarian imagination. S.V. Rajadurai and V. Geeta, editors of the Revolt anthology, explained the transformative power of this brand of journalism and the space it created for an inclusive polity in Tamil Nadu. They wrote, indignant, wickedly funny, expounding a philosophy of social compassion and comradeship, Revolt provided a much needed antidote to the scantimonious tenor of the political and social debates in Tamil Nadu. Unmindful of criticisms voiced from orthodox quarters and the nationalist press, however vituperative they were, Revolt persisted in its radicalism. End quote. There was a dual approach here. Kudiyarasu was meant to the populace for whose rights the movement was established, and Revolt was meant to reach the influential section to elucidate the egalitarian principles that govern the self-respect movement. The defining aspect of the self-respect movement's intervention was its multinodal arrangement. The different nodes were multiple cities and towns, multiple genres that varied from short stories and parables to plays and novels, parallel music and performances that resulted in the formation of the much celebrated Tamil Isai movement, creating a niche in the emerging influential media called the cinema. Each leader edited at least one magazine. For instance, Annadurai was the editor of Dravida Nadu, Malai Mani, Kanchi, Nam Nadu, Homeland, and Home Rule. Kalaignar edited Murasoli, the only surviving publication, and Muttaram. Nedunjazhiyan edited Mandram, Madhiyazhan founded Tennagam, ஏ.எஸ Tennarasu established Tennarasu, N.V. Natarajan edited Dravidan, K. Anpazhagan edited Inam Mulakkam. According to K. Tirunavukarasu, chronicler of the Dravidian movement, there were nearly 215 ideological publications from the movement, and their longevity varied from 6 issues to a decade. V. Rajesh, in his book, Reproduction and Receptions of Classical Tamil Literature, records some of the factors that contributed to the emergence of an informed Tamil public sphere. He recorded the fact that the writing of Tamil history has been a subject of interest for scholars in the language even before independence. From the beginning of the 19th century, missionaries, Orientalists, and colonial administrators made an attempt to comment on the history of Tamil literature based both on the literary works available to them and the information gathered from the teachers in this language. It is impossible to be encyclopedic in providing the comprehensive reading of the narratives of the self-respect movement, as it spans a vast temporal and spatial canvas. In this paper, I would like to provide hints that capture the vibrancy and the creativity and empathy that characterize the public articulation of this movement. The journalistic intervention alone deserves a book-length paper. For instance, in 2022, R. Subramanian compiled a book titled ஏன் நமக்கு இத்தனை எதிரிகள் தந்தை பெரியாரின் இதழியல் Why do we have so many enemies? Journalism of Tandai Periyar. It's a nearly 1,000-page treatise on Periyar journalism alone. Tamilman Padipagam has brought out a 110-volume set of the collected works of C.N. Annadurai, a stunning compilation that runs to 54 volumes and has nearly 22,000 pages by Gaurava Publication brings together the epistolary articulation of Kalaignar alone. In my biography of Kalaignar, I have written about the differences in approach between Periyar and Anna towards language and culture. I wrote, the duality of self-respect movement emerges clearly during the interaction between Anna and Periyar. While Periyar and Annadurai were fully agreed on the diagnosis, their prognosis were differing. For Periyar, language was an instrument for communication, nothing more. For Annadurai, language was an organic, socio-cultural oeuvre that lends a distinct identity and a sense of pride and belonging to the people. In this oeuvre, the first set of experimentation took place in theatre. The Indian left gave birth to a remarkable institution called IPTA. Congress had a galaxy of musical performers such as M.S. Subbulakshmi and D.K. Pattamal. When the self-respect performers came into the stage, they drew the best examples from both the left and the Congress and created their own trajectory. Eric Miller, director of the World Storytelling Institute, has recorded how the Dravidian movement looked at ancient Tamil literature and literary figures such as Avayar and Kannagi. In the process, we learned that the movement had a clear distinction between memory, which is a vital political tool, and nostalgia, which is a sentimental distraction. While the role of the thespians such as M.R. Radha, K.R. Ramasamy, S.S. Rajendran, and D.V. Narayansamy, among many others, shaped the new stage and the celluloid rules of the Tamil. In this paper, I will focus on the contribution of the brilliant comedian N.S. Krishnan in creating the space for iconoclasm in public discourse. N.S. Krishnan died on 30th August 1957 after a brief illness. Kalaignar wrote a moving obituary in Murasoli. Kalaignar recollected his interaction with NSK fondly. He wrote, NSK taught us to use humor to confront enemies. He helped us to realize the difference between rivals and enemies. He told us that humor can neither generate hate nor can it divide people. Hence, use of laughter as a tool to help people think and arrive at a considered conclusion was a gift by NSK to us. Karnanidhi was fond of deploying one-act plays for polemics within his films, and his plays he dipped deeply into the early Greek thought. Greek thought and Greek literature had a big influence in the early Dravidian writings. Kalaignar wrote, if Periyar was Socrates to the self-respect movement, Anna was its Plato. NSK was movement's Aristophanes, who was the greatest representative of the ancient Greek comedy and the one whose works have been preserved for the most, enabling us to understand that his comedy delivered more than the fabled Greek tragedies, observed Kalaignar in his obituary of NSK in Murasoli, as well as in Ninjakku Neethi. Remember, this was written in 1957, much before BJP emerging as a political party. While it is nearly impossible to list and enumerate the number of creative subversions of NSK, I would like to record just one of his stupendous interpretations that changed the dynamics of Tamil proscenium and as its extension, Tamil cinema. By the early 1940s, NSK had become a star and he was widely described as India's Charlie Chaplin. He used the popular musical idiom of Katha Kalachepam to turn mythological and religious stories on their head and give them a radical twist. NSK gave a new interpretation to the story of Nandan. According to the Saiva tradition, the untouchable Nandan gains temple entrance after innumerable sacrifices and attains mukti by disappearing inside the temple. In NSK's tale, the protagonist named Kindan gains entry into school, which he referred to as a real temple, and emerges as a scholar and a winner. Here, the goal is no longer attaining mukti, but gaining public acceptance and being part of public good. NSK's comedy is one of the reasons for the forces of bigotry find it difficult to gain foothold in Tamil Nadu even today. The role of the centralizing forces to contain the democratic potentials of the self-respect movement gained currency in the post-colonial era. One of the methods adopted by the governments, both at the union and at the state, to cripple the growth of the DMK was to invoke colonial laws to ban the works of the DMK leaders. Among the long list of banned writings, the popular ones were Anna's Aryamayai and Latchya Varlaru, கலைஞர் தூக்குமேடை, பாரதிதாசன் இரணியன் அல்லது இணையற்ற வீரன், ஏவிபி ஆசை தம்பிஸ் காந்தியார் சாந்தி அடைய, புலவர் செல்வராஜஸ் கருஞ்சட்டை ஒழிய வேண்டுமா, புலவர் குழந்தை சிராவண காவியம். Of these banned texts, let me share some thoughts on and some observations about புலவர் குழந்தை சிராவண காவியம் in detail. Ravana Kavyam was first published in 1946. It was banned in 1948, one of the earliest books to be banned by independent India. The ban order was issued by the then government of Madras. The inputs and suggestions came from the union government. In 1971, the DMK government, led by Kalaignar, lifted the ban on the book, saying that this is an epic that begins in the south and travels to the north, unlike the story of Rama that begins in the north and travels to the south. There are two important evaluations of this epic, one by Annadurai published in 1946 and another by Kalaignar published in 1971 when he lifted the ban. These writings give an idea of the cultural aspects of federalism, an issue that often gets ignored in the discussion of federalism, where political devolution and fiscal matters occupy pole position. As I have written elsewhere, both Anna's essay and Kalaignar's literary criticism of Ravana Kavyam were from a considered positions. That both Rama and Ravana were literary characters and not historical beings. While Rama was used by the hegemonizing forces to create the Arya Maya, the epics celebrating Rama, Ravana Kavyam is aimed at Dravidian awakening. It does not aim to replace Ramadasans with Ravanadasans, argued Annadurai. Ravana Kavyam's 5 cantos, 57 chapters, 3,100 songs provide a fine counter-narrative of heterogeneity where the accent is on decentralizing regional dignity and linguistic pride as opposed to the centralizing, homogenizing Ravana Kavyam where in Sanskrit, whether it was in Sanskrit or in Tamil. What makes Dravidian trajectory an interesting creative world is its conscious attempt to see that the universal human values and the particular civilizational inheritance of Tamils do not subsume the other. Politically aware artists created space for dialogue to mutually learn from each other's lived experience. They invested in the process of give and take and inculcated the willingness to adopt and transform. In their book, Rule of the Commoner, DMK's formation of the political in Tamil Nadu, 1949-1967, Rajan Kurai Krishnan, Ravindran Sri Ramachandran, and B.M.S. Burguna Rajan have a chapter titled counter narratives explaining the multiple strands that contributed to the creative interventions. They talk in detail about three plays: Iranian by Bharaidasan, Needi Devan Mayakam, and Sivaji Kandai Hindu Samrajyam by Annadurai. One of the interesting interventions was Kalingar's adaptation of the novella by Annadurai titled Rangon Radha. The film was produced by Meghala Pictures. The novella itself was an adaptation from a British play, Gaslight by Patrick Hamilton, which gave birth to the term gaslighting to denote manipulating someone by psychological means into doubting their own sanity. Viewers are able to interpret the film as representing the Congress's manipulation and its psychological games. The lyrics of the film were by Bharaidasan, Udumalai Narayanakavi, NSK, Kalangar, and Pattukotte Kalyanasundaram. This was the last film before the DMK decided to enter the electoral politics. However, the creative effort that helped DMK to position itself for the electoral politics was in 1952. The film was Parasakti. Earlier in a seminar on the film, I recorded the central democratic role played by the film in transforming the DMK from being a political idea to a political reality. I have also pointed out that Kalingar's approach in Parasakti was a conscious attempt to widen the support base of the DMK at a time when the political landscape was dominated by the Congress, the CPI, and of course Periyar's Dravadar Kazhagam. As I mentioned elsewhere, it's important to understand the narrative structure deployed by Kalingar in the film to understand its full political and cultural import. It is basically the reverse of an epic narrative. In epics, be it Homer or Ramayana, the main element is the exile of the protagonist and the resolution that comes about with the end of their exile and their happy return. Parasakti starts with the end of the exile in a sense, an anticlimactic opening when the protagonist Gunasegaran returns to Tamil Nadu from Burma. The return is not an happy one. The situation at home that forced the people to seek better prospects in exile has become worse. It further fragments the family, creates a much larger cleavage between the rich and the poor, and the state missionary has no real plans to integrate the repatriates. The naming of the characters, the deployment of songs extolling the virtues of Dravida Nadu by Bharaidasan, the use of the common bird, the crow, as the metaphor to drive home the importance of interdependency in democracy are some of the stylistic devices used by Kalaignar to capture the imagination of the Tamils. For instance, Kalyani, the sister of the protagonist, and the husband want to name their child Paneer Selvam if it is a boy and Nagamai if it is a girl. The allusions are clearly political. Paneer Selvam denoted the well-known Justice Party leader Sir A.T. Paneer Selvam, and Nagamai, the activist of the Dravidian movement and wife of Periyar EVR. The popular Kaka song, rendered in a soulful manner by Chidambaram Jayaraman, invokes the memory of the Sangam poet Kakai Padiniyar, and it effectively deals with sharing, interdependency, and addressing hunger as a fundamental developmental issue before a newly independent country. The film, in a sense, documents a shift from Periyarist maximalist positions to Annadurai's realistic fallback positions. In the essay, MSS Pandian points out that Parasakti did attack religion in definitive terms, but it also exhibited certain ambivalence about it. This ambivalence comes out candidly in Gunasegaran's vituperative monologue in the court, almost at the close of the film. Here, what we have to keep in mind is the film makes a distinction between the DK and the DMK and their respective position towards faith. While the DK rejected the religion in toto, the DMK rejected religious obscurantism. In 1953, a year after the release of Parasakti, Periyar led a protest by breaking the idols of Pillayar. Anna's response was akin to the dialogues of Parasakti. Anna said, "I would neither break a Pillayar statue or a coconut. This fine distinction is the one that propelled Kalaignar as a chief minister to nominate the reformist pontiff Kundrakudi Adigalar to the Legislative Council, to introduce the Tamil Archanai, and to legislate a law that permitted priesthood for all, regardless of caste. The challenges the government had to face is an one example of the political wrestling between a reformist political imagination and the status quoist judiciary. The film also teaches us valuable lessons and creative excursions to subvert dominant narratives and restrictive censors. Much before 1975 emergency, this film provided us with tools for creatively confronting forces of status quo. Pandian's essay documents the arguments of the critics of the film. Critics observed that by deploying a madman to criticize the god, the filmmakers were able to escape the sharp censor's observation. And another petitioner said that by making the film happening in pre-independence India, they managed to escape the control of the censors. Here, the central political import is that by making either a temporal or a spatial journey, one can address the contemporary political reality in an analogous manner. People understand the full import of every political and cultural references because they are not a passive recipient of moving images, but they are active listeners to the tone and the tenor of the film. In his essay for the Frontline magazine, headlined Cinema for a Cause, Kalaignar explained his politics and filmmaking in a succinct manner. He wrote, I use films to spread rationalist ideas among people. My objective in writing for films was to avoid obscenity and highlight the principles of self-respect movement and thereby appeal to the intellect of viewers. The respect of the general public's intellect is one of the reasons that made this film a significant political one as well as a commercial success. Apart from creative outputs, the movement generated substantial amount of intellectual capital, which indeed become the seed of the later day political manifestos. Rule of the Commoner records a profound impact created by Anna's lengthy political polemical text, Ariya Maye and Latchiya Varalaru. Along with these two texts, Anna also produced an economic treatise called Panathotam. This truly irked the left. P. Ramamurthy, a veteran left leader, mounted a strident criticism of Panathotam, which was effectively countered by Kalaignar in Murasoli. In the immediate days following the independence, Kalaignar wrote an insightful article for Kudiyarasu. One of the best articles of that period, and it remains a hallmark of good journalism even today, is titled Theta Idithu. It is polluted. This article was a frontal attack on the Thiruvaiyuru Thagaraya festival's humiliation of the Tamil language. During the annual festival, one of the singers rendered a Tamil song at the end of this performance in the honor of Tyagaraja. The next singer refused to sing till the place was purified as it had been polluted with a Tamil song. The organizers immediately called for priests to perform a special puja to purify the place. They cleaned the concert hall and the stage with holy water, and they invited the next singer to perform. This episode captures the status of Tamil language, especially in the Carnatic music circles. Before independence, the Tamil composers were not held in high esteem in this fold. Much has been written about Kalaignar's act of defiance during the emergency, and his journalistic subversive act was exemplified by publishing a fine cartoon panel by Chellappan. This cartoon panel, titled Metamorphosis, features Mrs. Indira Gandhi slowly transforming herself into Hitler. While this cartoon was republished in the magazine Newsweek, the government did not permit any of Chellappan's cartoon to appear till the revocation of the emergency in 1977. The use of cartoon was perfected by the movement, and in 1962 election manifesto of the DMK itself was in the form of an illustrated cartoon book. The visual grammar was central to the self-respect polemics as much as the import of the words. Kalaignar, in an interview to this writer, said that the Second International Tamil Conference gave an opportunity for the state government to also invest in public art. The Marina Promenade had two iconic sculptures, Mahatma Gandhi and the Triumph of Labour. As a PWD minister, Kalaignar arranged to commission the statues of 10 stalwarts for their definitive contribution to Tamil consciousness over 2 millennia. The statues were of Thirulluvar, Avvaiyar, Kambar, G.U. Pope, Crodwell, Subramania Bharadiyar, Bharatidasan, Vausi, Veeramma Munivar, and Kannagi. There are works by great sculptor Rodin outside the British Parliament. The striking works of D.P. Rai Chaudhary were the last set of public art in Chennai. Our commission of these 10 statues gave a new fillip to the idea of public art in Tamil Nadu, Kalaignar recollected. The paper provides only a glimpse of the prodigious output from the movement as it touches upon the works of some of the leaders alone. From ஏ.எஸ Narasu to T.K. Srinivasan, there are more than 1,000 works of fiction created by the ardent followers of the movement. I tend to focus more on Kalaignar because I worked extensively on his work for my biography. Kalaignar felt that Tamil should understand their own heterogeneity and celebrate the contributions of the state's different geographical regions. He wanted to explore each region of Tamil Nadu and bring out at least one salient feature. His novels, Romapuri Pandiyan, Tenpandi Singam, Ponnar Sankar, and Paimpuli Pandaravanyan were his attempts to record the spirit of each region of Tamil Nadu. Set in the Chola and Pandya regions, Romapuri Pandiyan dealt with the efforts made by Pandya kingdom to forge diplomatic relationship with distant kingdoms. And it also showed a fair-minded king, shunning fratricidal war. His novel Tenpandi Singam, which was first serialized in Kungumam between 1980 and 1982, and it was later published as a book. He spent nearly 3 months traveling across Sivaganga area of Ramanathapuram to collect various oral testimonies relating to the feud between two families, the Ambalakarars of Paganeri and Pattamangalam, in the background of the anti-colonial war against the British. It was a novel that wove multiple strands of truly diverse sources, colonial archives, oral testimonies, local ballads, and the remnant memories of the people living in the area. While the novel captures the poignancy of the loss and pain of war, it was also a clarion call against fratricidal war. Much later, when television opened up, this novel was effectively serialized by poet Ilayya Bharati and remains as one of the finest Tamil serials to be telecast by Doordarshan. Scholars like K.G. Radha Manalan and Karunanandam have written consistently about the movement. K. Anbaragan's lecture, The University of Madras on the Dravidian Movement and its Egalitarian Imagination, is a succinct lesson in civilization, history, and politics. V.R. Nedunchezhiyan's studied critique of Parimal Alagar's attempt to Brahminize Tirukkural had become a bedrock of multiple publications that worked tirelessly to keep the wonders of Tirukkural within the secular and the universal fold. There are diabolic attempts to reduce Tirukkural to a religious text, but it is the considered articulation of the self-respect movement that has provided a protective ring around these 1,330 couplets. Scholars tend to reduce Tirukkural to a non-inclusive ethical guide, a prescriptive compendium, or a text that spells out the rules for good governance. They tend to overlook the 230 couplets that deal with the world of desire and senses. Tirukkural deals both the personal and the political, which is the way classical Tamil has divided into two categories of Agam and Puram. The beauty of Kural lies in the fact that its Puram, its essential politics, is embellished by its celebration of love and desire. For instance, the third section, which celebrates desire, is a testament of Tirukkural's celebration of human body, passion, and importantly, a sense of ache. body, as these couplets show, is central to both politics and personal. And the self-respect movement played a key role to retain the materialistic reading of these words of wisdom. I need to end this presentation with my unfinished research. While working on the biography of Kalaignar, he spoke about his last creative effort. It was to script a television series on Ramanuja, the 11th century proponent of Vasishtadvaita philosophy. In 2015, it was a year after Narendra Modi had become the Prime Minister of India. He chose Ramanuja because Ramanuja transcended religion, caste, and wanted all communities to be treated equally. The idea of using religious philosopher with a large following to counter Hindutva was a sharp move. He also wanted to explain the difference between his approach to Ramanuja and Indira Parthasarathiy's 1976 play Ramanuja. He said Parthasarathi understood humiliation through his mind. For us, humiliation was an experience. What you learn through experience provides a much more profound impact, and he wanted to explain this, but we could never have that detailed discussion. Thank you.
Humiliation is an experience which has brought us here. So my question is like relating to politics. So when you spoke about Periyar and DMK, there are many instances where Periyar had clearly opposed DMK's policies, or whenever he felt it was irrelevant, he had opposed. But today, we seem to have no opposition at all. It is not that we have worked on it, but our ideologies have brought us here. Especially for DMK, there is no clear-cut opposition here in Tamil Nadu. So is it not a state of monopoly? How do you see this existence of politics now in Tamil Nadu, sir?
See, I always remember 1947 to 48, India. About that, EMS has written one fascinating piece. He said that when India gained independence, everybody celebrated independence. Only two people provided opposition. One was Periyar and another one was Gandhi. They were, by these two, they were, though numerically two, they provide the democratic space of being the opponent. If I think any society, there might not be numerical numbers, but critical opponents should be there, and I think there are critical opponents.
சார் நீங்கள் ட்ரெவிடியன் நரேட்டிவ் அப்படின்னு சொல்லும் போது அதில் சினிமா ஒரு டைமென்ஷன் சொன்னீங்க. ஆக்சுவலி அதில் எனக்கு சின்ன ஒரு இது என்னென்னா, பெங்காலி சினிமா வந்து ஒன் ஆஃப் தி மெயின் ஹப்ஸ் ஆஃப் பேரலல் சினிமா இன் இந்தியா அப்படின்னு எல்லாருமே பொதுவாக சொல்கிறது. அப்படி சொல்லும் போது ஒரு புக்கில் என்ன சொல்லியிருக்கிறாங்கன்னா, அது புக் பேர் எனக்கு ஞாபகம் இல்லை, பட் என்ன சொல்கிறாங்கன்னா அதில் வந்து அதாவது தமிழ்நாட்டில் ட்ரெவிடியன் மாடல் ஆஃப் சினிமா வந்து ரொம்ப மோர் சிம்பிளிஃபைடு ப்ரெசன்டேஷன் ஆஃப் சோஷியல் சினாரியோ. அது வந்து அது ரொம்ப ரியலிஸ்டிக் ப்ரெசன்டேஷன் இல்லை. அதாவது அது வந்து இட் இஸ் ஸ்பீக்கிங் ஃபார் த ஜஸ்டிஸ், அது ஒன்றும் இல்லைன்னு சொல்லலை, பட் வந்து அது ரொம்ப சிம்பிளிஃபைடாக ப்ரெசென்ட் பண்ணுது. அதாவது மக்களுடைய கஷ்டத்தை வந்து ரொம்ப கரெக்டாக லைவ்லி ரொம்ப ப்ரெசென்ட் பண்ணல, சிம்பிளிஃபைடாக ப்ரெசென்ட் பண்ணுதுன்னு சொல்கிறாங்க. இன்னும் தெளிவாக சொல்லணும்னா, கான்டெக்ஸ்ட் வந்து ஜெயகாந்தன் இருக்கார் இல்லையா, அவர் வந்து ஒரு படம் எடுக்கிறார் 1965 உன்னை போல் ஒருவன். அந்த படம் வந்து அப்போ அந்த வருஷம் நேஷ்னல் ஃபிலிம் அவார்ட்ஸில் அது வந்து சில்வர் மெடல் வாங்கிச்சு, பிரசிடென்ட் சில்வர் மெடல். அந்த படம் இங்கே தமிழ்நாட்டில் அது வந்து இட் வாஸ் நாட் வெல்கம். ஆக்சுவலாக அது வந்து ஒரு மோசமான படம், அந்தளவுக்கு எனக்கு ஒரு குப்பைன்ற மாதிரியான ஒரு இது தான் இருந்துச்சு. அதாவது ட்ரெவிடியன் சினிமா வந்து அந்தளவுக்கு, அதாவது இவங்க வந்து கரெக்டான ஒரு ப்ரொஜெக்ஷன் கொடுக்கலன்ற ஒரு இது இருக்குது. அது எந்த அளவுக்கு உண்மையா இல்லையா?
இன்ஃபேக்ட் நேற்று ராஜனுடைய பேப்பரே வந்து திராவிடியன் சினிமாவுடைய எஸ்தெட்டிக்ஸை பற்றி தான் பேசிட்டார். நேற்று ராஜன் பேசினதுக்கு பிறகு நான் இன்னைக்கு இதே கேள்விக்கு பதில் சொல்ல வேண்டிய ஒரு சூழல் வரும்னு நான் நினைக்கல. எஃபெக்டிவாக இருக்கா இல்லையாங்கிறது தான் கேள்வி. என்னுடைய சினிமா எனக்கான டிரான்ஸ்ஃபர்மேஷனை கொடுக்குதா? என்னுடைய சினிமா எனக்கான டிரான்ஸ்ஃபர்மேஷனை கொடுத்தா அது எஃபெக்டிவ் சினிமா. எனக்கான சினிமா யாரையுமே சென்றடைக்கலைன்னா அதுக்கு எந்த விதமான எஃபெக்டிவ்னஸும் இல்லை. இன்னைக்கு வந்து அப்போ அந்த பெங்காலி சினிமா வந்து அவ்வளோ பெரிய டிரான்ஸ்ஃபர்மேஷனாக இருந்ததுன்னா ஒரு பெங்காலி ஃபிலிம் இண்டஸ்ட்ரி வந்து ஒரு வைப்ரண்ட்டாக இருக்கணும். ஆனால் தமிழ் இண்டஸ்ட்ரி வந்து ஒரு வைப்ரண்ட்டாக இருக்குது. இன்னைக்கும் இங்கே வந்து ஒரு ஜெய் பீம்னு ஒன்று வருது. அப்போ இன்றைக்கும் வந்து வட சென்னையை பற்றி பேச முடியுது. இப்போ வட சென்னையை பற்றி பேச முடியுது, ஜெய் பீமை பற்றி பேச முடியுதுன்னா இப்போ இதுக்கான இடம் வந்து இங்கே வந்து ரொம்ப பெரிய அளவில் திறந்திருக்கு. இந்த அட்டெம்ப்ட் வந்து மூடுறதுக்கான முயற்சிகள் வந்து தமிழ் சினிமாக்குள்ளேருந்து நடந்திருக்கு. நீங்கள் வந்து ரிசர்வேஷனுக்கு எதிரான தமிழ் சினிமாக்கள் வந்திருக்கு. ரிசர்வேஷனுக்கு எதிராக தமிழ் சினிமா வந்தபோது அதை தயாரித்த ஒரு இயக்குனர் வந்து நாங்கள் சன் டிவியில் நான் அப்போ எடிட்டராக வேலை செய்த காலகட்டம், நான் கீழே இறங்கி வரும்போது அவர் வந்து சன் டிவிக்கு வந்து ரைட்ஸ் விற்கிறதுக்காக வராரு. அப்போ வந்து பேராசிரியர் அன்பழகன் வந்து யார் இவருன்னு கேட்டார். இவர் தான் வந்து இயக்குனர் தயாரிப்பாளர்னு சொன்னபோது, இவரை கண்டு நம்ம கட்சிக்காரர் ராமநாராயண் பெரிய சினிமாக்காரர்ப்பா, அவருடைய படத்தில் பாம்பு தான் இருக்குமே தவிர விஷம் இருக்காது அப்படின்னு. அப்போ அவருடைய படத்தில் பாம்பு தான் இருக்கும், விஷம் இருக்காதுன்னும் போது இவங்களுக்கான கலை பண்பாடை பற்றின ஆழமான புரிதலில் தான் அந்த ஒரே ஒரு லைன் சொல்லுது. அவர் அவ்வளோதான் சொன்னார், அதுக்கு மேலே அவர் ஒன்றும் விளக்கவே இல்லை. யார் இவருன்னா இவர் யாருன்னு சொன்னேன். அப்போ அவர் சொன்னது, இவரை விட நம்ம கட்சிக்காரர் ராமநாதன் பெரிய சினிமாக்காரர்ப்பா, அவருடைய சினிமா பாம்பு தான் இருக்குமே தவிர விஷம் கிடையாது. அந்த ஒரே ஒரு ஸ்டேட்மெண்ட்டுக்குள்ள இந்த மொத்த ஹிஸ்ட்ரியை வந்து அடக்கிட்டார். நம்ம வந்து அதை வைத்து தான் பார்த்துக்கணும் தவிர வேற நீங்கள் வந்து இப்போ உன்னை போல் ஒருவனை வைத்து கொண்டோ இல்லை அவள் அப்படித்தானே வைத்து கொண்டோ எல்லாம் வந்து சினிமாவுடைய வரலாறு வந்து நம்மளால் முழுக்க பிடிபட முடியாது. இது எல்லாமே வந்து வெறும் எக்ஸ்பெரிமெண்ட்டுங்கிற லெவலில் தான் இருந்ததே தவிர மெயின் ஸ்ட்ரீம் தாக்கமாக மாற்ற முடியல. மெயின் ஸ்ட்ரீம் தாக்கமாக மாற்றியது நீங்கள் வந்து லெஃப்டில் வந்து தியேட்டரில் பண்ணாங்க, இப்டாலில். திராவிட இயக்கம் சினிமாவில் பண்ணியிருக்கு. இந்த ரெண்டை தவிர வேறு யாராலேயும் உள்ளுக்குள்ளே வந்து மெயின் ஸ்ட்ரீமில் தாக்கம் ஏற்படுத்தினதாக இல்லை. இதுக்கு வந்து நிறைய எம்பிரிக்கல் எவிடன்சஸ் இருக்குது, நம்ம பேசலாம். ஒவ்வொரு படத்திலும் என்னென்ன மாற்றங்கள் கொடுத்ததுன்னே நம்ம பேச முடியும்.